Now, simply put, front end is what the user can see. It is what the user, what client, what everybody gets to interact with. Immediately they get hold of a website or a web application. So it's unlike the back end, which is hidden in code. I don't know, you might have heard you might have heard people say that the front end developer is client's friend. Now, this is the reason majorly is because what the client wants to see is what the front end developer gives the client. But however, the back end guys do like a whole lot as well in ensuring that they store data, they process data, and yes, the endpoints that will be consumed are being created by the back end developers. So in quotes, you can say they work under the hood. Now, a front-end developer is a developer that builds front-end applications, that builds the user interface of any application at all, what the client gets to interact with. And for web development, front-end developers make use of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as the basic tools. Now, there can be other tools, other languages, other technologies, but the basic tools are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, front-end development is also known as the client-side development, like I had explained previously, and it is practice of building user interfaces. Now, most front-end developers can design or have an idea of design. This is very key in understanding design structure and also being able to think like a designer. And this helps you to like really build off some layers. I recommend there's this book, Refactoring UI. So if you are getting started in front-end development, it will really be helpful if you can go through, if you can read Refactoring UI. It will really help you with a lot of knowledge and how to think like someone that understands user experience, what the users want. Now, there are like numerous programming languages, about 9,000 programming languages. And I'm very certain when you ask a whole lot of, like 80% of developers know less than 50. In fact, the thing is, the most popular programming languages are less than 50, but we have like 9,000. But then the major front-end language is JavaScript. Other languages, however, can be used to build front-end applications, like some Java, which is another language. Some Java frameworks can be used to build front-end applications. Even PHP, a framework for PHP can be used to build front-end applications. But JavaScript, which is also called the language of the web, is the major front-end development tool language. We also have mobile development languages and frameworks like that, Flutter framework, React Native, which was also created alongside React. Yes. Then we have Swift, we have Kotlin, we have like a lot of other mobile development tools and frameworks and languages. However, I will be concentrating on the web. Now, another language in quotes is TypeScript. TypeScript is a strongly typed programming language that is built on JavaScript. You cannot learn TypeScript. I see a lot of people asking questions. Can I learn TypeScript first? Because TypeScript actually is really cool when you use TypeScript to work. It's really actually for like when you're working on a large scale or on a very large project. TypeScript really helps you. It helps take away the stress of debugging and debugging. It takes away a lot of stress. Like it makes collaboration, it makes working easy. Or you cannot learn TypeScript without learning JavaScript, because generally TypeScript is built on JavaScript. It's built on knowing that, okay, JavaScript has a few things that needs to be modified. or like a few rules that should be a bit stricter, or yes, things that should be put in. So that was like what Java's and TypeScript was built on. Yeah. Then also there's something called language agnostic. Now, for a developer to be language agnostic, it means that you can code regardless of the language. This happens when you have been able to learn the basics of programming, the basics of coding. You cannot be language agnostic if you have just really focused on learning a particular thing. Like you would learn, of course, you would start off by learning the language, but the idea is understanding what programming is, understanding its basics, and understanding how to actually solve problems with codes. That's what language. It's more like a generalized approach to programming, regardless of the language. Now, a lot of articles, a lot of discussions, and a whole lot of persons would ask, how do I get started with learning front end or JavaScript? Some people would say, start off with learning the C language, which is very recommendable because C is generally seen as because it's an ancient language, more like it's older than most of the other languages. So it carries a whole lot of, will I say, ideas. It has like, it encompasses a lot of things you would find in like other languages. Some people would also say that you could start off with learning Python. This would help you understand JavaScript more. And some people would also say start off with learning JavaScript. So I would generally say that if you start up learning C, it's really very nice. You get to understand your programming. If you started up learning Python, because Python and JavaScript are very similar. But then if you started up learning JavaScript, just JavaScript initially, very good as well. But one thing is for sure, like one thing remains in all of that, understand the language, like understand it, because the process, and you cannot jump the process, like you can't skyrocket yourself past the process of learning the language, JavaScript. So I think I've made a bit of emphasis on JavaScript because really that is like the most important, it is one of the most important things to learn when learning front-end development. Now, so let's start from the very beginning. The first step in learning front-end development is HTML and CSS. HTML and CSS, that is, like I initially talked about, user interface interaction. That is the first thing anybody would see. Like your layout, your building, your design, your styling, your responsiveness, like everything about what the user would see starts with your HTML and your CSS. Now, the HTML is the hypertext markup language. Usually referred to as skeleton of web application. Reason is because every other thing written or done on the HTML. So let me see. Let me quickly show you. Okay, so this is my VS Code, and this is how.
Sorry, we can't see your VS Code. I think you are just sharing just one screen. Okay, great, thanks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Can you see it now? Is it visible?
Yes, I can see it on my end. I don't know if someone else can see it.
Okay,
yes.
See?
Okay.
Great. All right. So this is like the basics of front-end development. And there are very easy ways to, instead of actually, initially you would have had to like write everything here. But then you just, by the time you click enter, it gives you like everything that I have, that I imputed initially. it's already appeared here. So you necessarily do not have to go. It's very important to understand everything here, like understand it. But there are like a lot of shorthand tools to just make your work faster, actually. All right, so yes, there we also have like extensions. There are a lot of extensions you can make use of. So now for this particular one, I'm using Live Server to open my server so that whatever I code it shows on my screen. I think opened already. Okay, so this is just a sample of how to get started, in the sense that you can just use a lot of extensions. There are a lot of extensions, and depending on what exactly you are trying to do or what technology you are trying to use, so each technology would have its own extension that you can make use of. Okay, yes, this is where extensions is. So depending on the one you grasped or you figured out would help your work, you just impute the first lines of the minimum, and then you can install them, whichever extension you want to install, you can just install them here. All right. Okay, then, okay. Okay, all right, so we have this now. I'm just trying to like show you how it looks like. So we'd have time for questions and answers. So if you have questions as we go on, you could just jot them down. So when you are done, you can ask your questions. Now, the next front-end development tool is CSS. CSS is cascading style sheets, and it's usually called style sheet language. It's used for styling, it's used for building layout, it's used for design, it's used for everything implementation of design that's been created. Now, ranging from your fonts to your spacing to animation to responsiveness to dark theme and light theme variants to colors to sizes, whatever it is, splitting your work into columns and all, decorative features, your CSS there for you, what you use to carry out everything style, design, and decoration. Okay, so before I talk about the CSS framework, I would just let me show you also CSS. Okay, now to get started with CSS, you would need to create this is just really blank HTML and CSS without any framework. Like here, I already created a file called index.html. I created a file called style.css. Also created a file called script.js. For the style.css, now the name of my file is style.css. So in order for my CSS to be applicable to my HTML, you're applying the style. You're applying everything actually to your HTML. Now in order to apply my style to my HTML, link it here by adding this, and then the file's name is style.css, as you can see here. So whatever it is, I go and I impute here. So when I start building now, and then I put a particular class, or let me say the name of the class, name or something. For instance, let me say I have it here. And let me say I could just come here and put a class. Class, let's say class of container. I'll take this out. By the time I come here, and then I try to style my container. Let's see, so now I've been able to style my container. Like, being able to style is actually the div I was able to style. So that's how CSS works. Now, we have a lot of CSS frameworks, but it's actually advisable to actually learn CSS before learning frame. Generally, when you're learning to code, you should learn the codes before the framework. The frameworks are made to make life easier. By the time you start using framework, it might be difficult for you to use normal tools. So for building layout, web layouts, we have different frameworks. However, you can use Flexbox. You could use Grid to build your layout for your web applications or website. That's like normal CSS without any framework. It would work perfectly, work beautifully, and give you your required result. Then CSS frameworks, we have Bootstrap, we have Material UI, we have Chapter UI, we have Tailwind, we have Foundation. There are a lot of them actually, but the popular ones are Bootstrap, Material UI, Chapter UI, and Tailwind CSS. Those are like the major CSS frameworks that are used. And I personally enjoy using Chapter UI. Material UI is also very nice. But Tailwind CSS is very, very cool. So when you want to get started with frameworks, CSS frameworks, you can just play around them, take up videos, read their documentation, and then learn how to use them, and then just see how you can work around with these frameworks. Now we've gotten to JavaScript. I hope I'm not so fast.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. Yeah, we are good.
Yeah. JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is a scripting language used to develop web interactive applications. It is one of the most popular programming languages in the world. It is referred to as the language of the web, like I mentioned earlier, and it is used to build front-end applications, but can also be used to build back-end applications in the form of Node.js. Now, JavaScript can be used to build, yes, some full-stack developers have learned the use of JavaScript in form of React or whatever front-end framework, and then also learning to use it as a back-end tool, which is Node.js. JavaScript is open source, which means that it's open to all. You could contribute, you can go and look at code, you can literally go on GitHub and comment or something there. And like I mentioned, the most popular client-side scripting language. Now, one of the things that makes you an actual front-end developer, first of all, of course, you should have mastered the art of building layouts, like perfect, beautiful UIs, just static pages, first of all. But your in-depth understanding and your knowledge of JavaScript and your ability to actually solve problems with JavaScript and also work with the language, use it to work use JavaScript to actually build applications. That's really majorly what differentiates front-end developers. One of the major things that differentiates front-end developers. Even designers, most designers these days, they know how to use HTML and CSS very well. Because nobody likes to be in the dark. Everybody likes to know what's up. So they learn to use other developers too that are not even front-end developers, understand HTML and CSS very well. Because most people actually started learning HTML and then perhaps they moved a bit to CSS and they're like, okay, let me do something else. But then when you are being able to use JavaScript to solve problems and to work with it, like you actually understand it in depth, that really differentiates JavaScript front-end developers. There are some roles that they just say JavaScript developer. And that kind of role, it means that they want someone that knows how to code in JavaScript. Like you actually understand it. It's hard. The understanding of JavaScript is really, really key in succeeding or in really doing well or in even loving to code as a front-end developer. Because by the time you understand JavaScript very well, coding, building, working with teams and collaborating and even building web applications would not be so much of a tough thing. Okay, I already mentioned this. Yeah, so at the start of it might seem a bit complicated, especially when you're like really new to the whole, you are as in totally new to everything, programming, coding, everything. It might seem a bit complicated because it's really different from CSS and HTML. But then the time it gets interesting when you discover that you can actually make something look. You can make something interact. You can make something active. It might just, you really get excited actually in the process of learning JavaScript. So yeah, I have compiled another list of learning JavaScript. This is just really to help you to get started really. The first thing is linking your JavaScript to your HTML, which I have done here. So, okay. So this is my script. This is my source code, script.js. That's the name of the file. And then this is, you don't have to put anything in between this. It's unlike the other tags we have. So this is script. This is your source code. That's like the first thing you need to learn. And you also need to understand why did some people put it below, like at the end of your body. Like you notice where I fixed mine. Some people could also put it somewhere here. I just maybe spacing it a bit. You need to understand why. That's like just the basics. It's a 3-line thing. Just read the code. So it's not like a big deal. It's actually advisable to fix your script below because of the contents of the page. But however, so I also put here variables, declare, assign, and rotate. You need to understand the cont, the let, and the var. How to declare variables, how to assign them, and how to rotate them. Then also data types like string, numbers, Boolean, arrays, and objects. You need to understand primitive data types and non-primitive data types. What are the primitive data types and what are the non-primitive data types? You need to understand basic operators like the plus, the minus, the equals to, double equals to, triple equals to, and a lot of them. The not, the and all. Now you need to also understand the Boolean logic, like the true and false. So really understand the Boolean logic. which is also similar to binary numbers. I don't if you understand binary numbers, which would which I would also this also happens. This also into talking about understanding basics actually. If you understand the one and the true and false, on and off, yes, very similar. So we also have the if else statement. If this is this, give us this, else give us this. That's the if else statement. And the ternary operators and switch statement. Switch statement is similar to the if else statement. The switch and case, very similar to the if else statement. It can sometimes be used with interchange, sometimes. So then we have ternary operators as well. We also have like the strict rules, the double equal to, triple equals to, one is equal to one equals to a one string, for instance, one string one and one equals to triple equals to string one. They will not give you the same values. So you need to understand ternary operators, switch statements. You need to understand loop logic. For me, I think that loop is like a very, 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 very interesting concept in coding. Like you find it in virtually most languages, let me not say all, but you find loop in like most languages that you from C to Python to even Java, like a lot of languages you find the loop logic and iteration, having iteration, the prediction and all. Then you need to understand for loop, you need to understand while loop. There's also the do while loop actually, but it is not always taught. Like it's not there's the do while loop in JavaScript as well, yeah. But it's not prominent as much as the for loop and the while loop. You also have the do while loop in C and a number of languages as well. The most common loop in JavaScript is the for loop. Alright, so we have regular expressions. Regular expression is very interesting, but there are a lot of rules, but it's really very interesting to understand regular expression widgets. Regular expression is actually used a lot in authentication, in having to figure out a particular password, how a password should look, how this should look, how if it gives you this particular, if it doesn't have a particular alphabet, a particular number or perhaps spacing, and however, should it give it true or false, should it produce the value and all. So we also have functions. In JavaScript, we have function expressions and function declarations. You need to understand how to call a function. Also, you need to understand the global scope and then the local scope, how you can write variables globally and how you can write them locally, the difference between writing them globally and writing them locally. You also need to understand return. You need to understand the return keyword. Then we have the anonymous function, we have function arguments, we have recursion. Recursion is also a very interesting concept in JavaScript. We have arrays, which is arrays. I think you find like arrays objects in like virtually every script, almost every script you write. Array is a unique type of object. We have array manipulation, how to manipulate arrays. You would also need to learn maps, the higher functions, yeah, like map, reduce, and filter. You also understand how they work and the results they actually produce and what you can use them for, how you can use them in your code. Then you need to also understand the DOM assets and DOM manipulation. You need to understand the event handling, which is the click, mouse. Them say in React now you would have something like on click, on mouse, and ensuring that like generally being able to like handle events in your code, modifying your HTML, how you can modify your HTML, modifying CSS, object properties, object methods, and then this keyword, object prototype, closure, updates. Updates are really more like updating a version of something. When you have ES6, like when you keep updating something, just the way you have React, the updated React. For instance, now there's the updated version, React version. So when you have like updates, you need to like know what's the latest, what's going on. Now, JavaScript frameworks. We have a number of JavaScript frameworks, and generally, frameworks make life easy. They make you write less codes, spend less time, and also enjoy your work. A few of the JavaScript frameworks include React, Vue.js, Gatsby, Next.js, Nuxt.js, Angular, and jQuery, which is actually going extinct. jQuery is actually like really, we do not really use jQuery anymore. What people really use now is React a lot, Vue.js, Gatsby, Next.js, Nuxt.js, which is a framework of Vue.js, then Angular. There are a lot of libraries as well. React is actually a library that concentrates on client-side rendering, and it does it so well. Now, other JavaScript libraries are React to Chat, Chat.js, D3.js. There are a lot of them, like they are numerous. These ones they should have like the highest number. These libraries are more like components that have been built by developers and made open to other developers, so that for instance, now when you're supposed to build an application that uses chat, you do not need to go and start building chat from scratch. You just, if it's permitted, you just go and take one of the chat libraries. There are numerous chat libraries. You just take one of the chat libraries and then you use it in your code to build your application. Then let me say there are a lot of libraries. I want to use another example, like the rich text editor library as well. So, for instance, you need a rich text editor in your application, your web application. Now, instead of having to start building a rich text editor from scratch, you just go and take one of the libraries that have been built already and you impute it in your work, and then you use it in your code to just display what you want to display, and then you can modify it as much as you want to. That's the idea of these libraries. It helps you to save time, and also, yes, use time to spend building from scratch. They are majorly components that you can impute in your code. Now, tools you need to get started. We have the Git and GitHub. Git and GitHub, they are not languages. GitHub generally, it's not a language. It's not. It's not. Let me just put it that way, because they are really tools that you can use for version control. For instance, now GitHub is a hosting service. We have others. There's one that used to be very popular before, Bitbucket. Then there's GitLab. So Git actually a version control system that is used in software development. It is used for tracking changes in any set of files. Then we have those repositories on internet with hosting services like GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and I'm sure there are like others. Then that's where you push your code to actually, and how it helps you collaborate well with teams, with your team, and if your work. Now we have IDE, which is your integrated development environment. If you notice where I was coding, that's my VS Code. Some people use Sublime Text. There are a lot of them. cannot recall but there are actually a lot of them. I use VS Code. Someone might decide to use another. Some people actually use what's the name of it? Text editor. A text editor. What part? Yes, and previously actually people used to use like normal text editors to write their code. But for integrated development environments, like I mentioned, like VS Code, Sublime Text, and whichever one you decide to use, VS Code is actually very popular. Also Sublime Text. Now, React. I'll just pick React to just summarize JavaScript frameworks. Like I mentioned before, learn the language before you learn the framework. It would make life easier for you. The moment you jump into frameworks, you would not want to stop using frameworks. That's just how it is. And the truth is that the minute you start learning, the minute you learn React, or let me say you learn Angular, or you learn Vue.js, or you learn a particular framework, you begin to feel that you already know what you're doing, like you already know how to really code. Then at some point, you now realize that, oh, I don't know JavaScript, and then you have to run back to your JavaScript. Now, React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. It's concerned majorly with client-side rendering and leaves many things up to each project to figure out, like routing and all. It really is just concerned. It's majorly concerned with client-side rendering, building the user interface and making it look good. It makes use of visible components, so you can create a particular component and use it a number of times, as many times as you want in your code, without having to rewrite the code. It handles dependencies. Frameworks are meant to ease stress. That is what frameworks are. And it also makes use of JSX, which enables you to write your JavaScript and your JavaScript in your HTML document. Then it provides amazing developer tools, and it has an amazing support system. Like, so when you have an issue with working with JavaScript, you would always most often find help. Either you go on Stack Overflow, you go to documentation, there's always like, it has a very large, because of how popular it has become, there are a lot of people contributing to React, a lot of people answering questions. There's a very large community for React, and also for Angular, which is built by Google. It has a large community, considering that it is older than most of the other frameworks that are new, and they are like easy to adopt. Actually, frameworks generally are easy to adopt. If you just sit down to read them, they are usually easy to adopt. You would only come to realize that, okay, this one does not have this does not have this. I think I prefer this, I prefer that. So you can just learn the basics and then pick a framework to master. All right, so we've gotten, okay, so I will just briefly tell my coding journey. I'm coming from a totally non-coding background. Like, I did not study programming or whatever related to programming, as a lot of people as well did not study computer science, engineering, or whatever related to codes. Yes, I started off in the client side of things, more like I started off working as a client support, and then from there I actually got interested in building applications. I've always been interested in building my applications, and that was like, and then also because of people around me actually, and then I became really intrigued, and that was how I started learning to code and learning programming. My learning path has been, well, my learning path was a bit fast because it was a bit hurried. I attended trainings, I attended boot camps as well. And initially I started off learning. I think I started off with free code camp. I did free code camp like for a few weeks or so before I started off with training. And then after that I went for an internship to get better. And I've also been able to like really work with a lot of other things as well. Lessons learned. Okay, so one of the things I always like tell people, like I already mentioned, process is very important. It's very key. Don't skip the process, because by the time you skip the process, what you're supposed to understand in what you're supposed to build in a day or 2 days, you use weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks building that thing. Reason is because you are trying to look for a shortcut. There's really no shortcut. You have to be able to give it time. You have to give it to yourself by reading, learning, and learning. There's no like shortcut. Initially, when I say like coding, and then when I have a project to work on, perhaps I'm supposed to like collaborate with the team, and then I get on the team really. I'm very good with reading codes and understanding it. When I read the code, I can know what's going on there. Whether it's a different framework or even a language, I can really just tell and understand. That was what I used to do. But it takes a lot of time, because if you check it, the time you used to go and read the documentation of that particular language, you'd spend it running to Stack Overflow or running or calling someone or stressing yourself repeatedly to resolve a particular issue. Meanwhile, you would have saved yourself that whole stress by just going to read. I just going to read here. So next thing, you can jot down questions if you have any. Trainings and certifications. Okay, I think someone's speaker is on. Can you mute? I don't know who that is.
Actually, I was hoping if you can just maybe you can round up very soon, so we can start accepting questions from people.
Okay. Yes. I'm okay. All right. Okay. So trainings and certifications. There are a lot of trainings you can take, and platforms and materials you can actually go through, like Free Code Camp, Harvard CS50, which is also very good. Old School, and there's ALX. Most of these trainings are free. There's Zuri training, very effective as well. There's readingSchool.com, which has a lot of free materials for learning JavaScript and web development. Then we have Refactoring UI, like I mentioned initially. It's actually a book. Yeah, I think there's a video on it as well, but you can just go through it. It's a very short. It's not something that will take you a bit out. Then we have W3 schools. We have HNG. W3 schools is very, very easy. So if you are really just getting really started, you can go through W3 schools. It simplifies everything. Then you can move to Free Code Camp and whatever boot camp or training you want to go through. We have a lot of JavaScript books, a lot of them. You think you know JS, there are a lot of them. Join a community, for instance, GDG. GDG is a Google developer group, the community for developers. At least you have a support system. You have people you can always throw questions at. You have events that come up often that will help you to understand and to get on smoothly with your journey. We have Scrimba, we have Decagon, we have Udemy, we have Udacity, and a lot more. Okay, the last events that held, opportunities and non-coding careers were discussed. So I would not hammer on this again. I'll just really go through them. I will go to non-coding careers that require programming skills like customer engineering, application developer advocate, applications, community manager, technical writer, technical product manager. Yeah, so I will not expand on those careers. But in case learning to code has a lot of benefits and a lot of things that you can really gain from it. Now, building your skills and knowledge, developing your skills requires a lot of reading. You have to be an ardent reader. Like, you have to be someone that loves to learn, loves to learn, first of all, and someone that can calm down to learn, like settle down to learn. And you also have to understand that it's a process. When you start coding, you'll see that they are like, is this a 5 years old, 5 years old, 3 years, 2 years, in fact, 6 months old. So the point I'm trying to make is trust your process. It's okay to sometimes get agitated at the fact that you are just starting, and someone that is 10 years old or 16 years or 10 years, 5 years, 8 years is already building rockstar applications, applying to cruise, Google, getting in and doing a whole lot of other things, and then you're just starting your process. Trust it. It won't be long before you can get there. Approximately, if you give yourself all the attention, time, you put yourself into work, in 2 years, you can comfortably become a senior dev, in quotes, like in 2 years, comfortably, if you actually work through the process. Some people become become that in less period of time. Some people can actually learn everything, not everything, at least learn really fundamentals and things. Some people would use 6 months. Some people use 1 year. Some people learn on their own. Some people have to go through trainings. Some people even have to go through physical classes. All I can say is really trust your process, and also learn to adopt and to adjust. So if you are really used to physical classes, you might not always have the opportunity to attend them. So take up materials online. There are free resources everywhere. You don't even need to pay. Free resources everywhere. YouTube, documents, articles on Hashnode, Dev to Medium, and the rest. So learn. It gives you a better understanding of tools, framework, language, or libraries. Always pick up documentations. I cannot overemphasize that. Read what the builders had in mind when they were building that. Because those people you go to ask about those things, they also went to read those documentation. They also went to read before they came to answer your question. And they also had like a bit of experience with issues working with those things before they came to answer your questions. So just go straight to the documentation, understand what they had in mind, what this technology is about, whichever framework you're trying to use, library, language, whatever it is you're trying to use. So it is a habit you need to build. Otherwise, you keep feeding on crumbs, you keep feeding on updates, you keep feeding on third parties. You really need like the real source of the knowledge. Then enjoy learn touch typing. So touch typing is just an ability to type without looking at your keyboard. So just enhances your work and also how you think. Your brain helps you work more efficiently. Then learn random things that can help you get better. Watch videos, watch how people code, look at people's code structure, view things, think, solve problems. Don't always run online. Take some minutes to try to resolve a particular issue before you run online. And also, you can have a mentor that's almost done. Thank you. And most of all, learn and you apply the language. When you learn, be sure that you are applying it. As you're learning, you are applying your knowledge. That it just doesn't seem like a dormant thing. Because by the time you learn and then you can't apply it, you feel you know what you're doing. Checking out things to challenge you. All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. I think I should just put my hands together. We should all put our hands together for that. That was really, really, really nice. Thank you very much, Buchi, Michelle. It was really, really good. Before we start taking questions from the audience, right? I just want to chip in one or two things. you see, front end development is amazing, as in it's cool, right? Because you get to build what people are going to be interacting with, like what she just talked about, like the frameworks and whatever, right? The technologies. Those are what big companies that are making 500 Fortune companies. Those are what they are using. React, Vue, AngularJS. Those are what they are using, and learning them is not that far from us. We just, with your internet and your laptop, you can just put up everything and just start learning and coding all along, right? So thank you very much, Buchi, for that nice and awesome presentation. I will, at this point now, will now accept questions from the audience, right? So you can just you can either raise your hands, I think using the raise hand features here, and as well as you can as well send in your message, send in your question as a message, so we can, just answer that. Then we can see where we can now move on to. So we are waiting for your questions, right? Okay. If there is no question yet, so this is our first GDG meetup, or let's say, yeah, GD as in Google Developer Meetup. So we're looking forward to doing more of this, starting from building front-end development, building front-end applications. So we're going to move forward to maybe more technical workshop, whereby we are going to be testing our front-end apps, actually working with these tools itself. It's not just explaining it, but actually working with these tools themselves, and as well as moving over to other technologies like maybe mobile development. And a month from now, or I think up to maybe a month, like we are looking like June, whereby we'll be holding our first Google Developer event, whereby which is called Google I/O Extended. It's actually an event whereby Google will have to learn about Google technologies, what updates there are there, what is open for us to use when it comes to Google Cloud, Maps, and all of that, Android development, and so on and so forth, right? So we are looking forward to having that event, and maybe in physical. Okay, I think Uchi Esther have a question, and says, please, what's the difference between TypeScript, JavaScript, and didn't get it when the speaker explained it. Okay, so Mitchell, I think that's a question for you. This from Esther, saying the difference between TypeScript and JavaScript. I know both of them are programming languages, though, but yeah.
Yes. So, like I mentioned earlier, first of all, you cannot learn TypeScript without learning JavaScript, because TypeScript is built on JavaScript. It's a language that is built actually for coding on any scale, and it's majorly used by industries, large organizations that are building on a large scale. It's really interesting. It helps to reduce debugging, and also increases collaboration. Also, TypeScript it's more like a modern age JavaScript language. JavaScript is like the scripting language that helps you to create interactive web pages. And then the TypeScript is like the modern age. It's more like modifying JavaScript, adding a few strict rules that would make the code look better. Yeah, and then yes, TypeScript actually is really object-oriented programming language, whereas JavaScript is really a scripting language. So that's majorly good.
Thank you very much. That answers the question. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So TypeScript is kind of like an advance of JavaScript, right? An advanced JavaScript, per se, kind of like JavaScript with a type that have like if you understand programming itself very well, you know there's something called the type system, whereby every data that you want to manipulate, right, has the type, right? So with TypeScript now, there's now a strict rule, because JavaScript itself is kind of like a loose type, language whereby you can just simply call a variable and just declare, give it any value at all, and it just swallow it up and automatically assign a type to. But with TypeScript, you just kind of like, there's other few caveats to that as well. So with the absence of any other question, right? Let's kind of like maybe introduce ourselves so we can maybe have one or two chip chats. Then we can now call it a day. So first of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Chukwuike Godswill. My name is Chukwuike Godswill Azubike. I'm a software engineer, and I'm currently one of the co-leads or GDG co-organizers here in Asaba. Right. I think Michelle has something to say. I heard Michelle said they can build backend with JavaScript. I don't get it clear, please. Can you please explain more? Okay, that's coming from Chukudi. So yeah.
So yes, like I mentioned initially, you can build. You might have even heard of something called the main. Now you can build backend applications in the Node.js form. Node.js is a backend framework. Now that's the form that JavaScript is used when it is used for backend applications. So an understanding of JavaScript actually can help you become a full stack code, or even understand how backend works. And like I even mentioned earlier, Python is very similar to JavaScript. So when you understand JavaScript, you can also understand, getting to understand Python would just be really great. And also building backend applications.
Yeah, thank you. So a little addition to that, right? Okay, yes, please. Someone wants to contribute to the question. Mr. Paul, please, you can go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goswillo. My name is Paul Polinos. Emmanuel, I'm actually a backend developer. Worked with Mr. Goswillo a lot of times. So I've built great applications together. All right. To the question, Shukudi, you asked if you don't quite understand the concept of using JavaScript for the backend. All right. Traditionally, our computers do not understand JavaScript because it was built to run on browsers. So, how do we make it work on our computers, more like PHP and Java and the rest of it? So there is a wrapper or a runtime or a framework called Node.js that helps our computer understand JavaScript. So with that, we'll be able to build the backend side, like send emails, interact with databases, interact with other APIs, and all those functionalities will be unlocked with JavaScript. Hope that answers.
Thank you very much. That's also do very well. Michelle, Chukudi, I hope that answers your question very well, right? So just like they've both said, Node.js is a runtime for JavaScript, right? Yeah, so JavaScript does not run on your computer. You can't use JavaScript itself to perform CPU computations, like, you understand, like what your normal Java can do or what your normal Python can do, right? But with Node.js now, you can now take JavaScript to do the backend and majorly on the web. So yeah. So talking about front-end development in general, I hope most of us, we want to, who are not that into front-end development, we want to come into front-end, learn the basics and here at GDG, the GDG community is open to help and contribute to your learning curve, right? So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Michelle. I think Michelle. I think we can reach out to you on WhatsApp or wherever, or maybe Twitter or wherever, so we can as well ask her questions, and I'm as well open as well. So on the WhatsApp group, on the GDG Asaba WhatsApp group, you can as well have questions. Just please feel free to drop the questions there, and anyone will be open to give answers to your questions, right? Especially when you're especially if you're a newbie, or you have some advanced stuff that you really need help about. So that's the major essence of communities in the first place. So we can all help each other and grow. So I think that will be it for this section. So we are looking forward to telling you guys the date for our next meetup, and hopefully we are looking to get a space whereby we can maybe be renting a space so we can have physical meetup, not always having online meetups like this. So we can have physical whereby we can have one-on-one interaction and network from there as well. So it's really awesome. Let me say great. I was hoping if we all get to know each other, maybe introduce ourselves, and I was thinking about that. I don't know if anybody will, if that's cool. So we will get to know ourselves in the group. So when we meet in physical, we can know where to pick it up from. So I will just kind of like start with Richard or Kocha, please. Can you?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It's Richard Okonicha.
Okay, thank you.
Okonicha.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm an engineer. I'm a software engineer as well. I've been in tech for a couple of years now, and yeah, I'm based in Asaba here. So I'm really looking forward to meeting all of you guys, and looking forward to the next meetup that's going to be on site or face to face. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm excited about this because I've been asking and looking all over for a community here in Asaba. And now that we finally have one, there's a lot to look forward to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're really happy to have you. So okay, the next person I would like to good news. Ozioma, please. Let's quickly just get to know you. Sorry, good news, are you there? Okay. Okay. Seems like good news is not with us now. What about Mofe?
Okay, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So my name is Mofe. Web developer, both front end and back end. Once in a while I like to work with PHP and MySQL. But I'm good with the front end too. Although I'm yet to learn the frameworks, React, Node, those Vanilla JS, Bootstrap, WordPress, HTML, CSS. I live in Asaba, but I'm currently in school, Uniben, so I'm not in Asaba at the moment. Okay. But it's been a couple of years since we thought there was going to be a GDG Asaba, and it's good to see it starting up again. So it's good to be here. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We are happy to have you, and trust me, looking forward to having more events and talking to you guys. Next person is Uche Esther, please. If you are there, let's get to know you. Well, before she speaks, Esther is one of our co-organizers. Those that help us to start up GDG here in Asaba. So Esther, please, if you are there, can we get to just kind of like tell us about yourself, what you do, and fun fact about you.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Uche Esther. I'm a front-end developer and digital marketer. Currently learning cloud computing. I stay in Asaba.
Nice. Awesome. Great. Yeah. Okay, there are a few more people I need to. Just a minute, please. Where is this? Okay. Who else have I not called? Okay. Mr. Perebo Paulinus, please. Let's get to know you. But first of all, before he introduced, Paulinus is actually a very close friend of mine. We work together, and he's a back-end engineer, a good one at that, right? Very good one at that. So before that, so let's get to know you, Paulinus. So we'll all get to know who and who we have here in the community. So when we meet, we will know who is who and what who is doing. So, Paulinus, are you there, please?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great.
All right, thank you, Mr. Godswill. My name is Perkbo Emmanuel Paulinus, like I have introduced myself before. I am a backend developer. I use PHP and Node.js, depending on the work requirements. I use either PHP or Node.js for my backend development. I do strictly backend, but sometimes I can open on full stack development too. Yeah.
Okay, great, awesome. So, okay, someone just joined us. I don't know. Although we are done with the main presentation, though.